Concerning Him. An Emmaus podcast is a ministry of Emmaus Bible College. Concerning Him seeks to enrich Christians around the globe by educating and equipping them through various media. For more information about Emmaus, please visit emmaus.edu.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Concerning Him, an Emmaus podcast. My name's Erik Rasmussen. Today we're joined by Dave Anderson.
It's good to be here.
We're glad to have you. Well, let's get right into it today, Dave. Let's begin by I should introduce you. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Dave is the pastor, is a pastor elder at Littleton Bible Chapel in Littleton, Colorado.
That's right. Yep.
You're here on campus this week speaking at Spiritual Emphasis Days.
Spiritual Emphasis Days. Love it. Love being here.
We love having you here. You're one of my favorite preachers to visit
thanks,
when I was a student. So, well, let's get into it today. I want to talk about how the Lord has worked in your life to be where you are at, to where you find yourself at Littleton Bible Chapel. Go ahead and tell us some.
Yeah, so I'm from Minnesota originally, so just north of here and west, in a small town called Cottonwood, maybe an hour and a half from Sioux Falls. But I went out to undergraduate at Colorado Christian University in Lakewood, Colorado. And my brother was dating a girl who was attending Littleton Bible Chapel. And he said, hey, you ought to come, when you're going to school, you ought to come to this church. We had grown up in an evangelical free church, great church, heard the gospel, but really had never heard expository preaching, verse by verse through the scriptures. Also, a weekly Lord's Supper was totally new. And just a plurality of pastoral elders was also new. So we came from a senior pastor model. So I show up at Littleton Bible Chapel, and I loved it. My roommates and I, when we didn't sleep in on Sunday morning, would go to Littleton Bible Chapel, and I just fell in love with the church, the principles. I thought, these people they're serious about the Lord. They want to follow the Lord. They want to, they're committed to New Testament principles, and it was countercultural, and I loved that. I love the fact that they're okay to take a stand on things that may not be trendy or cool. And I just appreciated the seriousness about the church. And so anyway, I started attending there. Long story short, my wife grew up in that church. And again, very long story short, we got married, and now I'm serving there as one of the elders, and have been there about 15 years or so.
Okay.
Full time. Yeah.
That's amazing. And Littleton Bible Chapel is where Alex Strauch is also a pastor elder. Is that
That's
correct?
right.
Okay.
Well, he's not actually serving as an elder right now, but for 40 years served.
Okay.
He attends. He still does so many things, but he's not one of the elders right now.
Yeah, Alex is the author of the book Biblical Eldership, as well as a number of other very good books, but that's probably the book that most people, if they've heard his name, have heard of or read that book. Tell us some about your relationship with Alex.
Yeah, so as a college kid, the Lord really got a hold of my life, and I knew I wanted to be in ministry. In fact, at the time, I wanted to be like a traveling evangelist and just kind of, travel around and speak. And Alex said, you need to be an expositor. You need to get serious about the Bible and teach the Bible. And it was kind of a life-changing direction for me in terms of I was going this way, and he kind of said, let's see if you can hunker down and serve the local church. And that was a huge turning point. He said, look, I'll mentor you. There was a church, a Baptist church in town near Littleton Bible Chapel that was looking for a pastor. I was a senior at college at CCU. And I was filling and speaking, and they said, hey, would you consider being our pastor? And I thought, thanks, but no thanks. Don't really want to do that. Don't think I'm ready to do. And Alex was the one, I told him that just kind of on a whim. Yeah, this church asked me to be their pastor. He said, you should do it. I'll help you. I'll mentor you. This would be good for you to get kicked around in church life and experience what many people experience. And so anyway, I ended up going there right as a senior in college, while I was in college, and through my time at Denver Seminary. And I didn't know what to do. So I said to Alex, I want to do what Littleton Bible Chapel does. I want to teach you the Bible. What should I do? And so he said, well, why don't you start with Ephesians? Here's some commentaries. I'll help you. And so it's kind of this mentoring by fire of I'm getting kicked around and learning how to put sermons together. And he was just, I mean, we probably met once a week at least. And he would just go over my sermon and help me with pastoral type difficulties. And, you know, and it was really, really a unique kind of mentoring, in the trenches type mentoring. But that's, so our relationship, and he's like a father to me. And we get lunch. I just called him this earlier today and had a question about something. And so he's the kind of mentor that's in your life. Let's go get lunch. Let's talk about what issues are going on. It wasn't this formal discipleship. It was just more of an organic hanging out, doing ministry, visiting people, serving together, putting together sermons for a conference, and him just kind of helping and being a part of that.
Wow. Well, praise the Lord. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's right.
That's awesome. You've mentioned a couple times, I'm going off script here a little bit. That's okay. You mentioned a couple times about the importance of expository preaching. You want to explain that a little bit and tell me what you mean by that?
Yeah, one way to look at it is it's exposing the text. And so rather than us imposing our views or just cherry picking certain passages we like, pet doctrines we like, really maybe a better way to say it is systematic expository preaching of going through books of the Bible. It lets God set the menu. And so we don't get to determine,
amen.
I want to really hammer these things. It's the Lord sets it. We submit to him and his word, and we allow him to drive the ship, as it were. And we get together on Sunday morning. We expose the word. We read the word. We stand up for the reading of the word. And then in a sense, we're all saying, okay, we want to do this. We want to apply this. We want to be about this.
Great. Well, I personally have fallen in love with the idea and the concept of expository preaching. I feel like at churches I've been to where it didn't happen, felt like there was something missing. Yeah. And when you're there, it's comforting to be, as Paul speaks about in Acts of the Ephesian elders, right? The whole counsel of God, right? You're not missing out on anything.
Right. Good. Yeah.
When you talk about being a pastor elder, what do you mean by that phrase? I feel like a lot of people have heard a lot of talk about the role of a pastor,
right?
A lot of talk about the role of an elder. And when you smash those two together, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, great question. It's an important question. So I think a better way to say it might be a pastoral elder,
okay, as
opposed to a board elder who shows up for a meeting and they're not really involved with, caring for the flock. A pastoral elder, a biblical elder, is caring for the flock. They're protecting the doctrine. They're protecting against wolves and false teaching. They're visiting the sick, James 5. They're caring for the church. In fact, you mentioned Acts 20. Paul charges the Ephesian elders to care for the church. I think the ESV says care, which is a terrible translation. Really, it's shepherd. It's shepherding the church. It's pastoral care. The confusion comes in that the way people use the word pastor today is they use it as a title, or they use it in the sense of, and it's ironic because a shepherd is the opposite of a title. I mean, it's like this low. Yeah. I mean, you're caring for the flock. It's never used as a title except for of Christ as the chief shepherd, the senior pastor, you might say, of the church. But this whole idea this concept many people have is that the pastor is kind of the lead, and then the elders, they're on for 3 years or 6 years, and they kind of rotate on. But really, the pastor is the one who drives the ship. That's not a biblical concept. This in fact, even the office of a pastor is not found in the Scripture. It's episkopos or episkopoi in Philippians 1, verse 1, to the overseers and deacons, episkopoi, diakonoi. So those are the offices. The overseer elder, 1 Timothy 3, Titus 1, there's the elder, but then you have the gifting of pastor in Ephesians 4. So some people will say, look at Ephesians 4. Paul makes this list and he mentions pastors. That's an office. That's actually, he's not talking about an office. It's in the context of spiritual gifts. So in that sense, men and women can have caring type, shepherding type roles, but that doesn't equate with the office of pastoral elder or episkopoi, presbyteros in 1 Timothy 5. Here's an interesting thought though. In 1 Timothy 5, 17, it says, the elders who rule well are to be considered worthy of double honor. So these are the ones, especially those who work hard at preaching and teaching. So you've got someone who is working hard. Let's say myself. I'm at Littleton Bible Chapel. I'm doing most of the teaching and preaching. I'm laboring in this. But I don't notice he doesn't give a title, a special category or a title to those people. He just says, the elders who rule well. And so I think it's such a disservice to eldership to elevate or delineate pastor and elder and say, well, you got pastors and they're kind of the ones who do the teaching and they're the ones, and then you've got the elders who kind of just rotate on and off. That's not Paul's vision for the care of the church. It's a team of qualified men who are shepherding the flock, Acts 20. Now, those who are, doing well, leading and laboring and preaching and teaching, they may get financial remuneration, but that doesn't put them in a special category of, sort of a elder among the elders. There is, I think, a principle of first among equals, but that should never diminish the role and responsibility that each elder has. And so that's what big concern or beef I have is kind of this idea. There's even a book recently written on this that Crossway published, and Crossway normally publishes such great books, but this idea of a plurality, but really it's talked about as these elders are just kind of supporting the senior pastor.
Okay.
And I just kind of cringe at that because that does not seem to be what Paul has in mind, and it diminishes really the role of the elder. So I don't know. It is a good question but I think the confusion comes with just the way people use the word pastor today. They throw it around, and it can be really confusing. Again, even using it as a title is ironic because Pastor Dave is not a title. It's never used as a title in the New Testament.
So then if somebody asks you, what do you do? What do you respond with? What do I do? What do you do for a living? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a good question because if you say I'm an elder, they think you're Mormon. No, so it's a fair question. I will a lot of times say I serve as a pastor,
okay.
but then I'll try to delineate and just explain, what that means. Again, if you say elder, they'll think Mormonism, or just if you're in evangelical circles, they'll think board elder. I mean,
okay.
So many people have this concept in their mind of. In fact, funny story. I was at this Baptist church, and it was a senior pastor model. So I came in. I was the senior pastor, a title I did not accept, but again, Southern Baptist. And then we had deacons, and so I went through 1 Timothy and the qualification for elders, and the deacons were kind of jiving with this. They're on board. We like this. This seems biblical. I mean, he's teaching the Bible, and seems to be a plurality of elders. And so I'll never forget one of the deacons said, I like this idea of eldership. I am so tired of caring for the flock and doing these other things. I want to just come to a meeting and not do anything else. So this idea of eldership, I love it. Let's do it. Let's move forward. And I just thought, oh, am I that bad of a Bible teacher that we totally missed the boat on this whole thing? Because no, it's you're leading, you're caring, you're shepherding, you're protecting, you're in people's lives. It's not this removed board type position that so many people have in the back of their minds.
Well, then do you want to give us some details about what does that look like day to day, week to week? What does being a pastoral elder look like? Yeah, good question. So we meet
in our church, we'll meet Sunday mornings is the best time. One of our elders is a pilot, and long story short, the best time for us to meet is early on Sunday morning. So we'll meet, we'll spend a half hour in prayer, just praying for different people, different situations, coverage of people. We'll have a time of shepherding updates, we call it, of just, what's going on, who's in the hospital, have they been called, who can visit them. A lot of times we're deputizing the deacons to help with this too. Deacons being the assistants to the elders. So they're helping with this. We're thinking about just, maybe things in our church we want to address. Maybe it's the Lord's Supper. How are we doing? Do we want to bring some change? Do we want to just being proactive about leading, communicating? Hey, we need to make this announcement. Let's communicate to the flock. I think during the week you're calling people, you're visiting people, taking people to lunch, checking in on people, and it's the oversight and governance of you're stewarding God's precious flock. Again, back to Acts 20. And you want to do a good job at that. You want to care for the people well. We're going to give an account of caring for their souls. And so we better take this seriously. This isn't a joke. I mean, one practical thing, you asked for practical examples, is we'll have job descriptions for each elder. So what we don't want is for someone to come on and it's kind of this ad hoc, I'm just kind of an elder by name, but I don't really know exactly what I'm doing. We want to have elders responsible. So maybe it's the missions oversight. And it just means they're the first point of contact. It doesn't mean they're the only ones involved. Or, I mean, they're the liaison, and they're taking the lead in missions. And they're reporting back, and another person may be the youth. They're taking the lead in the youth. Maybe another one's women's ministries, and so on. And it doesn't need to be like, for the rest of your life, you're now doing this. I mean, we can rotate every year. We evaluate. Are you doing too much? Do we need to take stuff off your plate? We want to care for you. But keeping the big picture, we want to feed the flock, protect the flock, lead the flock, care for the flock, shepherd the flock well, love them, and do what the Lord has called us to do.
As you're dividing up those responsibilities, are you guys at Littleton Bible Chapel, are you guys dividing up preaching equally, or how do you determine who's preaching and how much they're preaching, things like that?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, every church does it differently. I think there's a lot of latitude in the scriptures on how this is done. For us, we've kind of determined that we want someone who's, back to 1 Timothy 5:17, we think it's a good thing to pay someone to really labor at this and spend their time. So in our case, that would be me. The church has said, hey, we want to free you up to really give yourself over to the studying of the scriptures, the preaching of the word of God. So I'll go over our preaching calendar. I'll line up guys. For instance, this week and next week, I've got two men lined up to preach. One is not an elder, just a man who's gifted in preaching that we want to keep developing. The other man is an elder. But so some of our elders, while they need to be able to teach, defend sound doctrine, they're not all gifted in a Sunday morning sense. They may be gifted on a one-on-one or teaching a baptism class or other areas, but not all of our elders would be a Sunday morning type preacher, nor would they necessarily want to. Now, again, they need to be qualified and know sound doctrine, able to teach. But we also have men who are not elders who are gifted in preaching and teaching, and we're trying to find opportunities for them to labor in the word and preach and provide more opportunities for them.
Okay. Well, and you talked some about your time as a title that you didn't love, but the lead pastor, right, at this at this small Baptist church,
Yeah.
Correct?
Yep.
And then I'm assuming you kind of made a transition at some point from there back to Littleton. Is that correct?
Yep.
What was your experience like being a young pastoral elder?
Yeah, it was brutal in a lot of ways. I mean, I think I was probably 20, 21, kind of an idiot, not really knowing what I'm doing. And I just remember certain meetings I love the Baptists. But we had, I mean, it was Robert's Rules of Order, congregational input, and it was like a war zone. I hated these meetings because it's like, I don't know, am I going to get fired this week? I mean, what's going to happen? And we had some just, I mean, in hindsight, hilarious. But I mean, one meeting I remember crying afterwards, like, Lord, I don't want to do that. I felt like Moses. I don't want to do this. Why did you send me? What was the question? You said
your experiences.
Yeah, that's right. That's part of my experience. But it made me appreciate the plurality principle of just God's protection in a team. We were not meant to be lone range. This whole senior pastor model is a joke. It's no good. I mean, even if you didn't have the Bible, it's like, this is not a good system. And so the protection, the care, it's genius. God's plan is genius for having a team of qualified men. And so just in one sense, it primed the pump for coming to a church that had healthy leadership and a history of just balanced, normal, qualified men who love the Bible, love Christ, want to serve him. And it just really created a sweetness in me and an appreciation of this model. Now that church, since I've left, a great team of elders have actually come in there, and that church is nothing to do with me, but with the new leadership, they've gone to a biblical eldership, and they've kind of implemented that. But at the time I was there, it was very much an old school Southern Baptist experience.
That I could imagine those meetings being terrifying, especially for somebody so young. I mean, you're probably looking up at 40, 50, 60-year-old men who are...
Oh, man. And I'm like 120 pounds, and I look like a wet rat, and it's like, who is this kid? What is he doing here? And they were sweet. Honestly, it was a sweet church. There was some things that made me really appreciate a different kind of church leadership model. So...
Well, as we wrap up, I want to spend the last couple of minutes just talking some about biblical eldership resources.
Yeah.
What are they? You want to tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, really excited about this ministry. And I'm basically one team member. We've got a group of, I think, 6 different guys scattered across the U.S. and Canada. And we meet every Tuesday on Zoom. And a large part of this is our website, biblicaeldership.com. Check that out. But we started an online school, the School of the Shepherds, which is an online training course for potential elders to go through. And Alex Strauch does the lion's share of that teaching. We also host conferences every year. I'm trying to remember what the name of our last conference was. We've done some on expository preaching and eldership and the Christ model of leadership. So there's a lot going on there, but honestly, internationally, it's really exciting. In Africa, India, I'm doing a conference in Bangalore via Zoom, but they're taking our website, our material, and they're wanting to plant churches in India. Wow. And so it's been really cool to just kind of infuse biblical church leadership, the scriptural principles, and having churches eat this up and saying we want to transition from a senior pastor model to this model, and it's not. It's cross-denominational. There's all kinds of denominations that are lapping this up. So there's a lot going on with biblical eldership resources right now. I just couldn't be more excited about it on what's going. We just redesigned the website just a few weeks ago, and lots happening on that front. So
the school. And what was the name of that again?
School of the Shepherds.
School of the Shepherds. Is there a price to that?
I think there is, and it's a nominal price. I can't remember what it is. It might be the first session or the first semester or number of classes might be free.
Okay.
And if there's any kind of financial issue, I think we'd be happy to cover those costs, but there is a price, I believe. We also have, I could be wrong, but I want to say a couple hundred videos on how to run an elders meeting, qualifications for elders, expository preaching, care for your elders. How do we protect one another? counseling, pornography. I mean, fill in the blank. There's really a ton of resources, and our new website is going to make all of that material a little bit easier to locate and find, but should be a blessing for churches. In the future also, we love to take Alex's redoing Biblical Eldership book and the workbook, and we want to marry this together with the website, videos, podcasts. So literally someone could go through lesson 1, hear a podcast or watch the vodcast, go through the workbook, textbook, watch other supplemental videos. All this will, Lord willing, in the next year or so be sort of married together on the website, and should be a resource for churches. And again, what's thrilling for us is there's a lot of people going through it in the U.S., but this thing has taken off internationally. And boy, that's exciting. I mean, this isn't just about America, right? The gospel goes out to all nations, and all nations need healthy churches. And so to be a part of just sort of tipping the needle in that direction is really exciting.
Well, that's great. And one of the things you recently did on Biblical Eldership Resources is you wrote a series of articles on the Lord's Supper.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be the topic of our next conversation. So next episode, we'll have you back and we'll be talking through the Lord's Supper. But
sounds good, Eric.
Until then, thank you so much for being on today. And I'm looking forward to that conversation.
Thanks, Eric. Me too.
Thank you for listening to Concerning Him, an Emmaus podcast. Ministries like Concerning Him are possible because of the generous contributions from our partners around the world. For more information about partnering with us, please visit emmaus.edu/partner.